Welcome to Cake on Tuesday, where we spotlight the rule breakers, the underdogs who refuse to listen when everyone said it won't work. I'm Elizabeth Bieniek, and for the next 20 minutes, we're diving into another disruptive innovation story that proves sometimes the craziest ideas change everything. Today's guest is Christian Boucousis, the CEO of Afterburner. Boo's life was disrupted when a medical condition ended his dream career as an elite pilot in the Royal Australian Air Force. Taking a leap of faith into the business world, Boo found his fighter pilot training was a secret advantage that helped him become a successful multi-billion-dollar business owner, not once, but twice. This realization prompted him to branch out into leadership consultancy with Afterburner and write his best-selling book, The Afterburner Advantage. Boo has now helped over 3,500 organizations and over 2 million leaders translate fighter pilot precision into practical, everyday leadership. Boo, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to jump in here. Please start off by telling us a little bit about what sets your soul on fire about what you do.
Oh, just helping people. I mean, firstly, thanks for having me, E.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. Yeah, just being helpful, I think. I kind of feel like the world is less helpful than it used to be. And, I really love what I get to do today because I help people help others. And I kind of frame it up. There's a lot of good people in the world, but good people tend to kind of accept the status quo and they tend to go with the flow and really don't want to rock the boat too much. Gosh, there's a lot of cliches there. It's hard to get.
We'll just string them all together.
I see these people get a little lost in life and organizations. The way they've explained it to me before is they feel unseen, unheard, and they kind of give up a little bit and just start to just do what they're told to just exist. I don't think you need to live like that. I think if you can give someone a toolbox and a manual to transition into becoming a really impactful leader, I define that as a flawless leader, then you start to give the world a little bit of a shift. Like if you think of humanity as an oil tanker, an oil tanker needs a tugboat to change direction. I want to build these little tugboats that can kind of bring the oil tanker back on track. Whereas I think we've gone a little bit extreme in the way that we've lost the ability to find the middle ground. We're disconnecting with our humanity thanks to technology. And for me, I see it every single day. And I know it doesn't need to be that way. So that's kind of what inspired me to come out of retirement, buy this organization called Afterburner, and really create what I'm calling a movement of flawless leaders. Just people who can just transition out of the overwhelm and existence of life into the rarefied atmosphere of impactful leadership.
This seems like this is very timely because right now you hear so much about the quiet quitting revolution of the people that are just kind of plugging along. There's so much fear and uncertainty about the economy and job situation, all of that. But you talk a lot about this, having the courage to be accountable for your own journey. What does that mean to you and how does that apply?
Yeah, I was a fighter pilot and I wanted to be a fighter pilot from the age of 5. And then I joined as a teenager and made my way up through the ranks and flew these incredible airplanes for 11 years before I was medically discharged. And one of the things, you don't realize it at the time, but when I reflect back on a world where I try and bring fighter pilot mental models and ways of working into the real world, is that in that environment, it's very supportive around accountability. Like it offers you and it demands total accountability, but at the same time, it accepts that you're not going to be perfect and that mistakes are going to be made. And no matter how hard you work and how much effort you put in, no one will ever master the art of being a fighter pilot because it is so dynamic, it is so fast, and it is so complex that we just have to try and get to as close as perfect as we can each and every day, but also accept that we're not going to get there. And the wonderful thing about accountability is we often see accountability as accountable to someone else, but the ultimate form of accountability is accountability to yourself. If you look at it in a romantic relationship, we hold our partners to account for a standard we hold for them, rather than holding ourselves accountable to a standard we should meet for them.
Right.
And it goes back to that kind of helpfulness or giving. We see it in business all the time, where leaders have an expectation that people will do what's expected to deliver the result that makes the leader look good, rather than the leader creating the results and co-creating the work for the team to shine under their guidance. Uh, so, I think that the word is self-awareness, right? Everyone uses this word self-awareness. I prefer another word called situationally aware, where
Mm.
you're aware of the situation you're in, not just self-aware. Because I think the challenge with self-awareness is that can drive a lot of anxiety and indecisiveness. To
Yeah.
be fully self-aware means you're aware of the 50 cognitive thoughts you have every second. And that's kind of like hard to
All the
keep
good and the
tabs on.
bad and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. So what happens is there's reasons why we have these ideas of yin and yang, right? And why they're so powerful. There's never a balance. It's more like, I think of it like an equilibrium. Like it's going to be elastic. So you're always going to yin one day one way and then yang the other. But when you become self-aware, you're always trying to find this even keeledness that's just always even. So situationally aware is, of all the different versions I can be, and you can be 100 different versions of the same person. It's not being inauthentic if you act somber at a funeral and you act wild at a party. It's still you, but you're different versions of you. And being around humanity is the same. As a leader in certain circumstances, you have to show up in a certain way. As a father, you have to show up as a different version of yourself. And I think
Sure.
people get lost in thinking that if they show up a different way of themselves, then they're being inauthentic. So you have this massive wave during the woke generation, right? Where everything was being awake and aware of everything. Yeah. And it became quite chaotic because what happened is we became aware of some things and then we forgot about others. You can't be all aware, all seeing all the time. You can have contextualized awareness, and that's what situational awareness is, which is I'm aware of the situation I find myself in, my strengths and my weaknesses, and how best to show up in this situation, or as we say in fighter pilots, or abort, get out. Because sometimes you find yourself in situations that you're not prepared for, and you're caught off guard, and you can dig yourself a deep hole by constantly reinforcing a bad situation. So, you know, this is a extended conversation on accountability. So accountability means that I need to be accountable for what happens between a stimulus and a response. Like that's me, and I can be 100% accountable for that moment in time, that snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, to be fully accountable in that moment, I kind of crafted this idea of the three M's, these three dimensions that we need to be aware of. One is mindset, so that's kind of the mental side of it, and
Mm-hmm.
understanding that mindset is a combination of thoughts and action. It's not just thought. The second is method, and that is the way in which you process the world around you. And you can do that in a way that's fixed. You don't have to randomly interpret the world and come up with ideas and decisions. And then the third M is what I call moments that we show up as people. We show up at a human layer, at
Mm-hmm.
a kind of strategic planning layer, like in a very intentional layer. And then we show up in the now, which is the reactive emotional layer. And we kind of transition those three layers all the time. But typically, we do it without intention. We should be in a human moment. You and I now in a human moment. So if I was on my phone right now, which is what a lot of people do, I would not be in that moment, right? I would be between the moment of action and the moment of being human. The flip
Mm-hmm.
side is, particularly in business, is we're highly reactive. Like we're reactive in every aspect of life because we really are slave to the notifications on our devices. And if you think about it, if something goes bing and it gets your attention, you have by nature reacted. And when you react to a situation, it's the primal structures of the brain. It's the lizard brain doing what it does, which is like, oh, there's a rustle in the bushes. I better switch on and turn the dopamine taps on and drive up the adrenaline and be ready to go. So we've taken this masterful piece of human engineering to survive 100,000 years ago and exploited it in the digital age. So we become emotionally dysregulated, less human, more reactive, and we wonder why rates of engagement continue to drop and rates of burnout continue to increase. Uh, so stop it. Like you're accountable for stopping this from being your life.
Yeah.
So personal accountability is wonderful because it always means you can do something.
Okay.
If you don't blame someone, but you ask, why did I do that? Why did I make this decision? What could I do differently next time? You're in control of the situation. If my wife is upset, I have a role in that, whether it's justified or not. I don't know until I take accountability first.
Mhm.
So personal accountability is incredibly liberating. It's very freeing because it actually gives you the ability to control the one thing you can control in life, which is yourself, not others.
So I'm curious if we apply that to your own journey. I mean, you had a successful career as a fighter pilot. You then went and had an incredibly successful career as a business person, retired comfortably, and then decided to come back. What was that kind of personal accountability journey for yourself of, hey, there's more I could do. I need to come back.
Yeah, I mean, I try to, even when you know about all this stuff, it's still hard. Like it's not natural human behavior to be accountable. We tend to defer and blame and criticize rather than own things. So I had to just build a little kind of model in my brain, which is if I am emotional, start with me first. First of all, you need to be accountable. You need to be accountable to something. You can't just be generally accountable. Like accountability requires clarity. Uh, so for me, the first thing I ask in terms of my accountability is to say, what am I accountable for? Like what does good look like here?
Mhm.
And why is there a situation right now that's not achieving what the ideal state is? So I call that the execution gap. There is a gap between what you want and what you're executing right now.
Got it. Yeah.
And then I have to get curious about that and ask myself, what's going on here? Why, you know, and in time you learn there's certain things about you as a human being. I'm ADHD, so I need to manage stimulation. So if I'm in an environment where my wife or my family's overstimulating me, I typically am grumpier and less happy. Uh, so, but that's not their fault. That's for me. I just got to go walk up a mountain for now, get myself back to calm. I'm an entrepreneur, so my idea to expectation and delivery is very short compared to reality. So I know that my default reaction is if I do it myself and I do it quickly, then it's done and I don't have to worry about it, is not how I build a scale business. So I have to override that. And thirdly, I have to allow people to hold me accountable to myself. So if I exhibit these things and I don't apply those thoughts, then I give the team, my wife, everyone, my kids, the opportunity to challenge me on it. And basically, we always say things that are misinterpreted. We promise things, we underdeliver. I mean, Brene Brown says disappointment lives in an expectation unmet. Uh,
Hmm.
so, oftentimes the challenge is the expectation we set is unrealistic. There's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of reasons and cognitive programming, subconscious programming that we have that drives it to that. So we kind of end up in a world where 80% of our thoughts are negative and we primarily look through a lens of rose-colored glasses, which is really weird. So if you think about it, if we constantly set ourselves up to fail, then we're constantly going to be negative. So imagine if we changed that a little bit and we started to get really good at moderating expectation and we started to be more realistic about what we can achieve in a certain amount of time, then what you find by some sort of miracle is that the negative bias starts to fade away, that the negativity starts to fade. Too often we rely on personality types. Oh, they're a happy person. They're a grumpy person. They're a go-getter. They're lazy. It's just a snapshot in time. You've caught someone at a particular time. They've done a certain thing and you've labeled them something, right?
Right.
But inevitably it's a lazy person, usually doesn't understand what the expectation is, or they don't believe they can fulfill an expectation. So they can be managed by defining reasonable expectations so we all have these kind of primary programs, but we can all reprogram. We can all be a different version of ourselves, a version that we want to be. And I know that is achievable because it's exactly what they do with young men and women who dream of becoming fighter pilots. They reprogram every single one of them. from
Hmm.
basically being, I can tie my shoelaces to I can lead and operate missions with 80 other airplanes and win 99% of the time. That's a journey.
Yeah.
That is a journey. You, you don't come across many fighter pilots that aren't hyper competent at every single thing that they do because they've got the right mindset to build competence and confidence. And we call that the accelerated growth curve, where, right, I want to be good at something. Well, what's the first step? What's something really small that I need to get myself to understand, and then commit to the journey of the tiny, tiny steps that I need to take to get mastery of whatever I want to be, whether it's golf, kite surfing, being an aerobatic pilot, doesn't matter.
Mm.
So there's so much you can bring from the world of the fighter pilot because the whole system is created to build and grow people. And when we operate and understand that growth doesn't end, you don't grow to a version of yourself at the end of high school. You don't grow to the version of yourself after college. You don't grow to the person who your potential as the CEO. We all possess infinite potential. It's just for a lot of us, there's an internal narrative and a self-limiting kind of system that we have that stops us from growing because, wow, high school's hard. That's 5 years. Man, getting a degree is hard. That was 4 years. But what we don't celebrate is, wow, I just ran 200 yards further than I did yesterday. And I'm doing that every single day. I'm winning every day. That's the key here. That's the differentiator between how fighter pilot thinks and how we kind of our default human programming.
And a lot of this really is mindset because you're doing very hard things. You're working with people every day. You're doing very hard things. I know you talk a lot about how to avoid burnout. I want to ask that with a slightly different spin because this is Cake on Tuesday. We talked about celebration and finding joy in the journey. How does that play out for you when you're working with clients who you're helping them do incredibly hard things that require a high amount of resilience and diligence, but you need to be enjoying that journey and that learning process along the way? What does that look like?
Well, I mean, if you're climbing a cliff and it takes you 3 days to climb a cliff, and every single time you put your finger somewhere, it's a life or death situation, there's not a lot of joy in that. And in the world that we live in today, we don't create the space for joy because we're so busy. There's just so much going on. And we do like 100 things and don't really finish anything. We're really humanity. And I learned this, I was diagnosed with ADHD 3 years ago, and I started to embark on a journey to understand what ADHD is. And one of the attributes of ADHD people, and as I researched this, I realized this is not an ADHD trait, this is an every human trait, is we frame time up into really in two states. We don't look at time in minutes, seconds, hours, days. We look at time as now and later. That's it. Right? So I'm either going to do it now or do it later. And the problem is later gets really full. And now doesn't really ever get done. So there's not a lot of joy there, is there? Like if I've got this huge list of stuff I need to do and I'm not getting anything done. So the key flipping that on its head and finding joy is that we look at each day through the lens of what can I achieve today, not what do I need to do. And we're programmed again as humans. I love this word programmed because we are. Like I overuse it in conversations because I kind of want people to know you are a program, and just like a computer, you can change the program. But you won't change yourself without the program. You won't behave differently if you don't change the program driving the behavior. So when I talk about achievement, the philosophy there is wake up in the morning and set 3 things that you must achieve. Not want to, you must achieve. And when you start doing this, you'll realize that when you start out, you're way too optimistic in what you can achieve in a day, right? So you get better at that. The way in which you get better at that is to codify the conversation I had earlier, which is the expectation versus reality conversation. I call that the ORCA method. And the ORCA method is a 4-step way of thinking that ultimately turns into a new mental program. So the O is the objective. So what did I want to achieve? What was the objective today? And it's a very military word, objective, but equally it's important for us to understand that what you set to achieve must be an objective viewpoint, not subjective and not your opinion and not an intention.
Sure.
It needs to look like a wrapped up box with a ribbon on the top. That's the objective. It needs to be finished and we define finished as yes or no. Uh, so your 3 things you achieve are yes, no at the end of the day. There's nothing in between. There's no, oh, I put it off to yesterday. I hope to get it done. It's binary, done, not done. So then at the end of the day, you then introduce the R. So objective is the start of the day. R is the reality or the results, like what happened. And you either did or did not achieve those 3 things. And when you start, there's a good chance you're not going to have achieved them, or you're going to create an excuse straight away. So the C is curiosity, and curiosity is a no excuse, no blame conversation where you reflect on yourself as to what you did today to contribute to that failure. So, for example, you have to achieve something as a leader and your team has to do stuff for you to achieve it, and the team doesn't do stuff. Most people would say as a leader is my team didn't do the stuff. What a flawless leader says is, how did I not set my team up to succeed today? And the action, which is the A, and this is the whole purpose of the conversation, is the action is the doing stuff. So what am I going to do differently tomorrow to achieve my objective? So when you start to apply that as a step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, what happens, just like fighter pilots, is that becomes the way you approach everything in life. Every conversation that you have with someone is, okay, what are you trying to achieve? You've just asked me to do something. I can do it when I know what you're trying to achieve. What's your objective, right?
Yes.
So one, that solves the engagement problem that is prevalent in the world, because now I'm engaged because I'm going where you're going. Secondly, it forces the leader to be very clear about things and to start speaking in terms of this is where we're going, not this is what I want you to do. Because when a leader says this is where we're going, that's one thing you have to worry about. When a leader says this is what we're doing, that's 50 things you got to worry about. Have you done it? And that's why we have so many meetings, because we're talking about what we're doing. We're not talking about where we're going.
Right.
It's not hard. And when you think about it, it's logic. I mean, why don't we speak like that, right? But when you come across people who are successful and do well in life, this is how they think and this is how they talk. You go up to Kevin Hart and you watch Gary Vee, right? You watch Gary Vee's videos. Someone will come up to you and goes, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And you'll go, what are you trying to achieve? Where do you want to go? What's the dream? What's the dream? Because we get so caught up. There's this amazing study that was done in 2016 called Just Think. And it put a whole bunch of people one at a time in a white room in a white chair. There was nothing there. All they had to do was think for 6 to 15 minutes. And overwhelmingly, people rated it as a less than fun experience. So they changed the environment and asked everyone to do it again at home. Same experiment, sit on your couch 6 to 15 minutes. And they thought that the response would be much more positive because you're sitting at home, different environment. It was the same. It was not a great experience. And one of the gentlemen admitted to cheating and turning on the television. And they asked everyone else, and it turns out, quite a few people turned the television on instead of just sitting there. So the third experiment that they conducted was in the same white room with the white chair, but this time they put an electric buzzer that was wired up to each of the people on the study. And they were told, if you hit the button, it's going to hurt. Don't hit the button. And unsurprisingly, left in a room for 6 to 15 minutes with their own thoughts, 75% of men and 28% of women hit the button. They'd rather be busy doing something wrong and painful than invest in being thoughtful. That study there, I think, is really explains what's going on with humanity today. We would rather consume 30 minutes of Instagram or TikTok wisdom and take it as truth than invest the time and effort to learn and grow and challenge and peer review to actually come up with a balanced perspective on the narrative.
Yeah, that's a sad commentary on society right there. Chris, I have 2 questions for you to wrap up. One is, this is not your first company, so I'm curious, how do you define success for where you're at right now versus how that may have changed from when you first started out? And then my second question will be, where can people find you to learn more?
Well, I've learned in business that making more money than you spend is always a good way to run a business. So what that means is good ideas don't necessarily equal that outcome. So you need to be very thoughtful about, before a new idea, master what you're already doing. I think a lot of companies and business leaders like, oh, if I just do something new and different, I'm going to solve the current problem. And it's like, no, just solve the current problem. Then once it's solved, you've got a better platform to figure out whether your great idea is a good one. Yeah. And I've had 1,000 good ideas and wasted millions of dollars on them. And now I'm older, I've learned that that was not a good idea. And because I'm older, I don't have as much energy. So I know that every idea is exhausting. So keep it real. So I think that's really important. I think we're always looking at new to solve today's problem: a new partner, a new relationship, a new car, a new thing, a new box in the mail from Amazon. If I just get new stuff, I'm going to feel better. Not true.
It'll solve everything.
Yeah. And if you want more conversations like this, just type in my last name, Boucousis, and I'm kind of the only Boucousis in the world that does this stuff. So I'm pretty easy to find. Or if you just type callmeboo.com, it's my website. Flawless Leadership is the book. Afterburner Advantage is the previous book that I published last year. And afterburner.com is my company where we do this at scale across enterprise.
Awesome, Boo. Thank you so much for joining us at Cake on Tuesday. Really appreciate having you here.
Thanks, E. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining another Cake on Tuesday celebration of beautiful disruption. Please share it, review it, and find more innovative stories at podcast.cakeontuesday.com. I'm Elizabeth Bienik. Be bold, stay curious. Now go have some cake.